Bless your name, Jesus. I almost don't want to keep going because He's here. The closest thing I can think of to make the analogy is, have you ever had a time where you and your boo, whoever your boo was at that time, had time apart, a couple of days, maybe a week, and then being able to be reunited, and the reconnection without words being spoken that you felt in that moment before anything was said? That's the closest thing I can use to describe how it felt when He entered the room. It wasn't necessarily time apart as much as it was without having to say a whole lot. I felt the reconnection. Was that just me? Was I the only one that experienced that? And that is shared between the two doesn't have to be described to anybody else. And it cannot be described because it's what you two share between yourselves. And so I don't know what it felt like for you when He entered the room. And I don't even want to know. Because me and Him had our moment. I just pray that you didn't waste the moment complaining, bringing up old stuff, or worried about stuff that He's already got in His control. Because He's here. Hallelujah to your name, Jesus. Now, if this was a different kind of church, you know, I would try to impress you and launch into, you know, prophesying over your lives and all that kind of stuff. But what He told me to say is already prophetic enough. You just got to grab it. It's not going to be anything new, but it's going to be important for where we are and where you are. Because in 2023, you know, we've got this faith declaration that we're asking God to fill our cups, and not just to fill them, but fill it till it runs over, right? And we've spent time talking about what that cup is, or cups, because it's anything related to our lives, our pursuits, our sense of self, our sense of purpose, our understanding of who we are and how we are in the world. I don't know what area in your life where the cup feels empty. I don't know which cup feels empty. But that's part of why He's after hearing us come after Him to fill our cups, right? But then, the truth be told, I told you that we have a right to pray for Him to fill our cups, right? We're children of the Most High God. We're in relationship with Him. We are loved by Him. And so we have the right to pray for Him to fill our cups. But in order for that to happen, we also have to position our cups for the filling. We have to be properly aligned with Him and with His will. Remember, He said, if you ask anything in my name, which is according to my will, He said, I'll do it, right? In other words, you can pray it, but you got to do some other stuff to align and position yourself with my will. So when our prayer and our positions are all aligned rightly, now it's not a wish request. It's a prayer of confidence request. Does that make sense? Because when there's prayer and proper alignment, it cuts out the guesswork, right? So the question becomes, how do we position our lives for this cup filling? And it's real simple. We align ourselves, we position ourselves by putting principles into practice. Somebody say, put principles into practice. When we seek to consecrate our cups, we're positioning ourselves for the cups to be filled. Right? That's why in a couple of weeks we'll start our consecration. But that's also why the consecration leads up to this principle. Now, I'm going to teach on this principle, but I need you to understand, I've seen this principle used as a gimmick. All right? I've seen major ministries across the country. I've been involved in ministries where, they needed to make up the budget, and so they declared a first fruit Sunday. That's a gimmick. I don't teach about first fruits as a gimmick. I believe it's a principle that, when practiced, not only rightly aligns us with God, but it sets us up for something amazing to happen on a consistent basis, right? It's one thing for somebody to give you a Christmas gift, right? Oh, thank you for the gift. That's wonderful. That one-time gift. It's completely different when every pay period you get paid. Right? When it's consistent to that point that you can count on it. And when it doesn't happen, some of us go and say stuff that ain't in the 23rd Psalm. Because it's intended to be consistent. Watch what Proverbs 3:9 says. From the New King James translation, the Bible says, honor the Lord with your possessions. Seems like a simple statement, but think of that in the midst of the material world we live in. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. So your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Now, look at those two verses together. I want you to notice there's two parts to this. There's the principle that is followed by a promise. Right? It's a real simple arrangement that you see a lot in Proverbs and in some other places. It's basically an if-then statement. If this, then this. Right? There's the principle. If you practice this principle, then this will happen. Right? Look at the principle first. The principle is honor the Lord with our possessions. Seems simple, but it truly takes a spiritual, mental, and physical aspects and steps to make sure that we're honoring Him with our possessions. Because if we're not careful, stuff can have us instead of us having stuff. Now, for those in covenant relationship with God through Jesus Christ, He ought to get our first and our best priority in our lives. You see that delineated throughout Scripture. You can check out Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, where God says, now listen, I'm a jealous God, not from the sense of sin, but from the sense of if we together, we better be together. Right? I don't need you to have me and a side chick. Right? That's basically what that whole idea is about. If we are in this together, we are in this, and I need to be your God. You see it in Matthew 6:33, where he talks about seek first, make priority His kingdom and His righteousness, and all the stuff He'll add, right? He's got to be our first and our best priority. He even says it in Matthew 6:21. Check this out. For where your treasure is, what you value, what you love, what you honor, what you desire, wherever that is, whoever that is, that's what has your heart. Right? So then when we talk about a first fruit offering, we first have to define it. What does the first fruit mean? I know this is review for some of y'all. Just stick with me because I want you to hear the principle. The first fruit is any amount from what God has allowed our work to produce that we then offer back to God, but that little part is representative of everything that we got. Right? If it's like I have a whole 20 piece, but if I give God a nugget, it's as if I gave him the other 19, the fries and the drink. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, right? God's not asking you to give him 10 of the nuggets. He's not asking you to give him the fries, because some of y'all, that'd be the fight right there. Like, wait a minute, God, you can't have these fries of mine. He's simply asking for a part from what our work produces as an offering back to him to say, God, I'm giving you this because this represents everything I got. My health, my children, my family. This represents my stuff. This represents my energy. This represents my calling. This represents my purpose. This is everything that I have. I'm giving it all to you as a sign that I'm not holding anything back from you. Isn't it amazing that he doesn't? Because listen, before I met Lady Bree, I was in this pseudo relationship with this other chick that, God bless her wherever she is now. Thank God I'm not with her wherever she is, because she was one of those needy individuals, you know. And I tried to figure out why I was with her, but then it was like the Lord was like, "Well, I did call you to ministry, and so you always look for these little assignments to do." And I was, you know, anyway. So I realized you're not my assignment. But anyway, she was so needy, and it would be like she wanted everything. Like, and I don't mind, you know, sharing my heart with you, but leave me alone. I need to go to the bathroom. Why do I have to leave the bathroom open? Let me use the bathroom in peace. Can I just have that? Can I have that? She was one of them kind of individuals. Needed way too much. Right? So when Lady Bree comes along and is like, you cool, just don't act a fool. I was like, oh, yeah. And I willingly allowed her into every part of my life. Right? God is saying, I'm not asking for everything, but I want everything. But show me that you would give me everything by giving me a little bit. Because when I see that, I know I have your heart. Does that make sense? So that's why when he sets up this whole idea of the first fruit in Leviticus 23:10, write that one down, check that out. He talks about when you enter into the land and you take over these fields from the Canaanites and you have your first harvest, take a little bundle of grain. You don't have to give me the whole field. Just give me a little bundle of grain and bring it as a first fruit. In Deuteronomy 26, he talks about when your crops produce, bring some of the first things that grow. Now, I know y'all don't know this because y'all are city folk. I grew up on a farm. I grew up planting stuff. And it's interesting that the first ones that grow are always the smallest, because the big stuff is still coming later on in the harvest. God doesn't ask for the big stuff. Give me the little bit that comes first. That's enough for me to show that you would give me the big, but you're willing to just give me just a little bit. In Exodus 23:19, he talks about the first of your first fruits, that the stuff that your life produces, the things you get paid for, the things that people see and value about your work, your input, your intellect, your energy, what you bring. Think through what part of that can you bring as a representation of everything that you've got, right? That's in essence what a first fruit is. I have been places where they have put an amount on the first fruit. I was my home church. They told us that meant bringing an entire first check of the year. And listen, I've done it and struggled. Like, what? How can, God, if I'm honoring you, why do I have to show up to the to the benevolence office at the church? Like, that don't. Biblically, it never says what. It just simply says a small part as a representation of everything, right? Because the point of the first fruit giving is this. It's to honor God. Yes. It's not to prove how spiritual we are. It's not to and watch this. The way that he does it, because he sees the nugget as the whole value meal, he promises to bless the whole value meal. So you can't get more blessings by giving 2 nuggets.
My God.
Does that make sense? It's all about honoring God. It's prioritizing him. It's putting my commitment to God above all else that comes. It's the first fruit. Watch this. It's not about the amount. It's about the thought and motivation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because the motivation and the intent is what God is after, not the amount. So if you somewhere and they say, well, we're going to give first fruit, so everybody has to give $2,000. You can go right back you can go to Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 35, be like, nope. The amount is between me and him. I know people who share this pastoral ministry with me, be like, Reverend, you just shot yourself in the foot. No, I didn't, because this ain't a gimmick. This is about us consecrating our cups by honoring the Lord. Right? It's the whole point of it is to honor God. And what you and he decide between you and him, that's y'all's business. Because it's not about making anything up for the church. The purpose of this first fruit giving is, as we rightly align ourselves with God, now God can do what the church can't do. All right, you'll see it in a minute. Watch this. With the purpose of the first fruit giving is it consecrates my entire life, my whole year, all of my income, whatever bonuses that might happen, all my material possessions, all of my relationships, all of my energy, all of my health issues. I am bringing God my entire life in that moment. And I'm saying, you are special and important to me. I'm honoring you with it. Because the principle behind first fruit giving, you see it in Romans 11 and 16. In Romans 11:16, Paul brings up this idea of the first fruit, and he's talking about Jesus being the first fruit. It's interesting that he would say Jesus is the first fruit, because if you look at the Jewish calendar, when Jesus was crucified, when he was lifted up, it was on the first fruit offering day. You have to study yourself. Just take my word for it right now. So when Paul says in Romans 11 and 16, if the first fruit is holy, then the other stuff that the first fruit came from is also holy. Talking about if Jesus was resurrected from the dead and he is the first fruit of those who will be resurrected, if he's holy, if he's dedicated, if he's consecrated to God, then the blessing flows from the first fruit down to the rest. Right? So when I bring that nugget, the whole value meal is consecrated. The purpose is to consecrate. The idea is to dedicate all that God blesses me with to him, right? So God, bless me with what I got. But with this first fruit, I'm also giving you permission to bless everything else that you might add. Can you see the faith in that? Yeah. Like, Lord, bless my raggedy car, but I'm giving you this so that when you allow me to get the new car, that will already be blessed because I already gave you the first fruit.
My God. Thank you.
Okay, that 2 people saw that. Let me try it again. Okay, so I'm saying when I bring my first fruit, I'm saying, Lord, bless everything I currently have, but my faith is that there's some other stuff that's going to happen because all of me and all of my life is dedicated to you. So when you bless me with that other stuff, I don't have to bring it up to Pastor Upton and ask him to pray over it because I gave my first fruit. It's already blessed before I even drive it off the lot. But then here's the other side of why God asks for the first fruit to be given. Because he wants to set us up for praise and celebration. You just have to take my word for it. You'll have to see it for yourself in Deuteronomy 26, verses 5 through 8. You can actually go through verse 11. Because in chapter 26, verse 5 through 11, he gives them what they say as they bring their first fruit. And the first fruit is basically a testimony. Lord, I was jacked up and messed up and lost without you. You found me. You blessed me. You saved me. You've been blessing my life ever since then. And now I'm bringing you this because you're so important to me. And watch this. As they say the journey that they came on, as they recognize God's intervention and his watch care over their lives, I can almost imagine some of the Jewish folk bringing their first fruit started out like y'all. They started out real humble. And then they started feeling that thing. And then they started going in. Lord, I thank you. Lord, I bless you. Lord, and because as they thought about what he had done, and how he has been and how he has kept his word and how he has shown himself strong, it would induce praise and get their minds off of what I left back at home and what I got to do with the rest of it, and I got to go back and finish my harvest. I'm not thinking about all of that because look at what God has already, look at his track record, look at the things that he has provided, look at the ways that he's made. And then in verse 11, after they got done offering it, God said, now go and celebrate. Go have a meal. Go to the restaurant. Go and chill. Go and be happy about the fact that I have blessed God. Now watch God bless me. So watch this. This practice, there were particular things that they had to do. The first fruit was always given in the spring of the year. That's in Leviticus 23. You can check it out. That's why whatever Easter Sunday is probably not when Jesus was crucified, but it would have been around the same time of year. It's close because he was the first fruit offering, right? So in the spring of the year, they were to bring their first fruit. They were to gather up some of the first grains or some of the first fruits that ripened. They were to bring it as an offering. They were to bring it to the place of worship. Now, it's interesting because in Exodus 23, verse 19, when he says bring it to the place of worship, there wasn't even a place of worship yet. I just felt that one in my own spirit. They didn't even have the tabernacle yet, much less the temple. But he says, when you bring them to the place where the designated place of worship. Right? In other words, you can't do the consecration of your life separate from the place of community and worship.
Wow.
You can't offer first fruit offering at Pillow Presbyterian. You can't do it at Couch Congregational, right? You got to come to the place where other folks are connected in community. Now, I already know the folks, you watch it online, listen, don't worry about it. The spiritual, couldn't remember when the lump represents the whole is represented in the, so listen, don't trip. Don't trip. Stick with us. Watch this. Because as they brought it to the place, the priest put it in a basket and then either lifted the basket up or waved the basket. Right? As an act of dedication. Like, you ever see them dudes when your plane lands and they have them little sticks? And the real lazy ones be like, but most of them, try to at least give you a sign of where to steer to, no matter how dark it is outside or no matter what else is going on. The wave offering is the sticks to help you land, Lord, where the blessings need to come. Right? It's this wave offering before the Lord. But now there was one last piece. As the priest was waving or lifting, the offerer was supposed to tell a testimony. It's in Deuteronomy 26, verses 5 through 10. This is one of them. As we move our way toward First Fruit Sunday, I think you ought to read it and then start crafting your own. Right? Because the whole thing is, I don't even deserve to be here. But your mercy and your grace and your salvation and your blessings have brought me, kept me, got me here. And now, in recognition of who you are to me, I'm giving you this nugget. And I'm believing that you got the whole value meal in your hands. Right? Now notice these specific things had to be there. It had to be a first fruit that was determined by the offerer, not the priest. The offerer determined what was their first fruit. Then they had to bring it to the place. They couldn't be disconnected from community is the point I want you to see. They had to allow the priest to lift that offering up before God. Then there had to be the statement of testimony that the God you have been is the God that I am trusting for the God you will be. Did I say that too fast? The God you have been is the God I am giving myself to, knowing that the God who has been, that if you've been that, then I'm trusting you to continue to be. Right? Because now it was offered with that testimony as an act of worship with a statement of expectation. The expectation is, I have done the principle, which means then I'm expecting the promise. Now go back to verse 10 of Proverbs chapter 3. Proverbs 3 says, honor the Lord with your possessions, with the first fruit of your increase. Verse 10 says, and when you do, if you follow and practice the principle, if you position the cup, then your barns will be filled with plenty. Anybody remember Sweet Lenny from Good Times? See, some of y'all too young. Y'all don't know Sweet Lenny. If I ain't got it, there ain't in there. If I give you some, there is plenty. God says, if you honor me, I'll be Sweet Lenny in your life. That your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Watch this. The promise is a continual state of blessing in the life of the giver. If you honor the principle, the promise is, I'm going to start something that I ain't going to stop. So that every time you look at where you are, you will remember that I honored the principle. So now there is an expectation of the promise happening in my life. He says that so then, or show enough, your barns will be filled with plenty. Doing the principle activates the promise. He says your barns, the place you save for later consumption. Right? That would be like your regular bank account. You know, you get the little ATM card, you're like, about to put it in this machine, and I don't need this machine to lie to me. I know I'm not the only one who's ever had that you talk to the card before you put it in. I know I'm not the only one. Don't act up. Don't act up. He says that the place that you have, that you're thinking about what to live on for right now, that place would be filled. The idea is to, not only would it be full of, but there would be a source of replenishment so that it stays full of. I said that too fast. Okay. He says your barns will be filled. The idea of filled is it's going to be enough in there every time you go, but I'm going to attach to it a source of replenishment so that even though you took from the barn, the next time you go back to the barn would still be full of. He said it would be filled with plenty. The idea is abundance. It's the satisfaction level. Like, okay, we used to go, we had these friends in this previous church that we were a part of back in Texas that, there would be a group of, there were like 3 or 4 families that, once or twice a month after church, we would go to each other's houses, and then we would prepare food together and bring food, and we'd have, a little fellowship after. And there was one home that we would always go to. Now, we had 3 little ones. They had 3 teenagers. The other family had a preteen and a child, and then it's at least 6 or 7 adults. Now, when I walk in your house to eat, and you got a little saucepan of green beans, and you got all these people to feed. Listen, Lady Bree, you can't tell it because, she eats and I gain the weight for her. That's the way our dynamic works. But she can eat. Don't trip. She can eat. And she would, every time we'd have to go over to the certain people's house, she'd be like, oh, they don't never make enough food. They ain't never got enough food. And somebody have to make a run to go get a bag of chicken or something. Because we was always running out because there wasn't plenty. God says, I'm going to make sure that, because, nothing more frustrating than getting a thing of beans and getting 7 of them. Because you're trying to save because you counting all the other people that got to eat. And you eat your little 7 beans. And you ate, but you ain't full. I know ain't nobody ever. Not being full makes you mad. Like, I just got a little taste, and I want to be full. God says, I'm going to make sure that you are full, that your barn is full, that your life is full, that the fullness will be there. You will have the satisfaction of knowing that my relationships and my health and my family and my bank account and all that I have done that represents my life and my cup, that there will be a satisfaction to it when you practice the principle. Then he talks about the vats. The vats where they would bring the grapes, and they would stomp out the grapes to make grape juice. Grape juice, grape juice. Add a little sugar, let it sit for a while. Grape juice. And it represented the place where investments for the future are stored and prepared. Right? Because it wasn't just grape juice. It was grape juice that sat for a while to be a part of communion later. Okay, so got 3 people that see where I'm going. It's the place where I'm doing work, but I'm laying up for later on. He says, and in that place, I will make overflow happen. The idea is to break or to burst forth. It's to exceed limitations. It's bubbling up and then spreading out. He says, now I'll make sure that what you live on is always replenished to the point where it's full. But even the stuff that you're worried about for what's going to happen when I don't have a job. I'm with you, right? In that place, I'm going to make sure that every time you think about it, you'll have to move back because enough has been made, enough room has been made. I can't even get to the source of what I first laid up because it's so much pushing me back out. Watch this, the promise. If you practice the principle, do the principle, honor God. When you do that, the promise that is attached is manifested in overflow. It'd be one thing if we served a God who said, now, if you honor me, I'll take care of you just for what you need. But we serve a God who says, you honor me, I'll make sure that you won't even be able to quantify where the blessings come from Because I'm going to operate in overflow when I fill your cup. When you bring your sippy cup to me, I'm going to fill it to overflow. I'm going to have it break out. I'm going to have it bubbling forth. I'm going to move past whatever limitations you have on what you think you should have.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm in somebody's. Listen, if I come by your house, you don't have to invite me in. Just wave at me. Because some of us have said, if God blesses me unthinkable, it's going to look like this. And God's like, oh, really? That's all you think I can do? Let me show you who I am. Let me show you what I really can do. Because don't box me in based upon your expectations and your limitations. Well, Pastor, I can only do so much on a teacher's salary. Watch God do stuff with teacher salaries that CEOs don't even get to do. I can't get no faith in here. Listen, I'm done. When we position our lives for cup filling by putting his principles into practice, he attaches promises to the practicing of the principles that will be manifested in a continual state of overflow. It's one thing to have peace in your marriage, but what would it look like to have an overflow of peace in your marriage? What would it look like to not just be healthy, but every time you go to the doctor, they have to scratch their heads and be like, something don't add up because you shouldn't be this healthy at your age. What would overflow of God filling your cup look like? And whatever that is, multiply it by 10 and take it to the 17th power, God says, because that's what I can do when you practice my principles. When we dedicate all of our lives and all of our possessions and align them with his will, it positions us to have him fill our cups till they run over. When we take the time to consecrate the cup and to honor him and to put him in the right place in our lives and in our minds and in our priorities, God sees it as everything being given to him. And he releases the promises that go along with that principle being practiced in overflow on a continual basis. Listen, there are some of us that are walking in blessings now because somebody else in our generational line sowed a first fruit. There's certain things that are happening in your life that have nothing to do with you being the best Christian. It's because at some point there was honor. And God said, because you practice the principle, I'm going to keep my promise. So when I talk about First Fruit Sunday, and I'm just going to keep it real, I hate First Fruit Sunday. Because my wife has a bigger heart than I do. Like, I want to honor the Lord, but can we? And then she'll be, well, what number is God telling you? Because my numbers are always smaller. Because I'm too moored in, well, we got this bill and we got that coming up. We got to do that. And I'm trying to figure out how to make it. First fruit always stretches my faith. It always pushes me. Because it's supposed to. Because that's how much God means to me. So when we talk about first fruit, again, this ain't a gimmick, right? Honestly, hear my heart. You could give God the lint in your pocket. Refuge is going to be okay. Why? Because you've practiced the principle. And a person who is connected to refuge is about to see the promise manifested in their lives. So this fast is all about us consecrating our cup, getting our minds right, getting our priorities right, realigning with him, putting us in a position to practice the principle. First fruit ain't about what God wants from us. It's what he wants to release to us. So I hate asking as a pastor for first fruit offering. I hate as a worshiper having to give a first fruit offering. But I can't deny it works. I can't deny that God's promise is attached to the practice of the principle. I have seen it too many times come to pass. And so we want to enter 2023 in this spring season, positioning ourselves to have our faith declaration manifested. Fill my cup, Lord. Run it over. Fill up all of the empty and depleted areas in my life. Don't just give me enough. Let it run over. Let it run over to the point that others walking by get blessed because they came in close contact with me, because I honored you. And so we're entering into a time where it's time to start getting serious. It's time to start thinking through what moves you individually need to make. Getting serious about your relationship with God. And I kind of get a good feeling because you wouldn't even be out on a cold Miami morning unless you wasn't trying to be serious about God. But as we focus and as we hear from Him and as we consecrate ourselves and intentionally go into this time of fasting, denying our bodies so that our spirits can be clear as the Spirit of God speaks. All of that is a part of positioning us, consecrating these cups to watch God do what He promises to do. I need everybody standing.